The census that missed Earth. The Dominion Census Hall stretched across 3 city blocks on the capital world of Vexerin Prime. Inside its crystalline walls, Administrator Kelroth stood before the Grand Registry, a holographic display showing every known species in the galaxy. All 7,463 of them. The count is complete, High Arbiter, Kelroth announced, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Every inhabited system has been surveyed. Every sentient species has been catalogued. High Arbiter Theshan, a being whose translucent form shimmered with ancient authority, nodded slowly. And the Empire now extends its protection to all who qualify for citizenship. This is our finest achievement in 10,000 years. The Dominion prided itself on order. Every 100 cycles they conducted the Great Census, sending probe ships to every corner of the galaxy. Species that met the criteria, tool use, faster-than-light capability, complex social structures, were invited to join the Empire. Those who declined were left alone but monitored. It was a system that had worked perfectly for millennia. On the other side of the galaxy, in a small yellow star system the probes had designated as Sector 7G, priority level. None, Captain Maeve Chin stood on the bridge of the UNSC Endeavour. The ship had just completed its shakedown cruise, humanity's first vessel capable of sustained warp travel. All systems green, Captain, her first officer, Commander Rajesh Vance, reported. We're ready for the maiden voyage to Alpha Centauri. Maeve smiled. Humanity had finally done it. After centuries of dreaming, they had broken the light barrier. The stars were theirs. Take us out, Commander. Let's show the universe what we're made of. The Endeavour's engines hummed to life, tearing a hole in space-time. Neither Maeve nor anyone else aboard knew that their little corner of space had been marked on the Dominion's maps as uninhabited. Primitive radio signals detected, no action required. The probe that had surveyed Earth had done so 300 years earlier, during humanity's Industrial Revolution. The automated systems had noted the radio waves, classified them as pre-sentient communication, and moved on. No one had bothered to check again. After all, the Dominion was thorough. Their census was perfect. Or so they believed. Back on Vexerin Prime, Kelroth prepared the citizenship packages for the 47 new species discovered in this census cycle. Each would receive an official welcome, embassy assignments, and integration protocols. Sir, his assistant, a young Threen named Milvex, approached nervously. There's a discrepancy in Sector 7G. What kind of discrepancy? Kelroth didn't look up from his work. The automated monitoring station detected a warp signature. But according to the census, there are no FTL-capable species in that sector. Kelroth's eyes finally focused on the junior administrator. Then it's an equipment malfunction. File a maintenance request. I already did, sir. But the signature appeared again. And again. 3 separate vessels, all with unique energy patterns we've never seen before. For the first time in his 200-year career, Kelroth felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. Pull up the sector data, he commanded. The hologram shifted, zooming into a sparse region of space. 1 yellow star. 8 planets. The third one marked in green, life-supporting atmosphere, but the note read, pre-industrial. No sentient life forms detected. When was this last surveyed? Kelroth demanded. Milvex checked the records. 300 cycles ago, sir. Standard protocol for primitive systems. 300 cycles. A long time for a species on the verge of industrialization. Send a reconnaissance ship, Kelroth ordered, his voice tight. Immediately. As Milvex scurried away, Kelroth stared at the tiny blue dot on the hologram. The third planet from that unremarkable yellow star. Something was wrong. The census was never wrong. But deep in his core, Kelroth knew. They had missed something. They had missed someone. Meanwhile, the UNSC Endeavour was making history. Maeve Chin walked through the observation deck, watching the stars streak past as her ship traveled faster than light. Behind them, 3 more human vessels were being completed. The Beijing, the Lagos, and the Sao Paulo, each one a testament to human ingenuity. Captain, we're picking up something odd, the communications officer called out. It's not coming from Alpha Centauri. It's everywhere. Explain. There's a network out here. A communication grid spanning thousands of light years. It's like someone's built an internet across the entire galaxy. Maeve's heart raced. They weren't alone. They had never been alone. Can we tap into it? Working on it now, but Captain, the officer's face went pale. I'm seeing references to something called the Dominion. And there are thousands of species listed. Thousands. The bridge fell silent. Humanity had just learned they were not pioneers exploring an empty frontier. They were newcomers to a civilization so vast, it defied comprehension. And nobody knew they existed. Kelrotha's reconnaissance ship, the Surveyor's Pride, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Sector 7G. Its Varelian captain, a cautious officer named Threxus, immediately activated all sensors. "Scanning the third planet now," his science officer reported. "I'm detecting massive electromagnetic activity. Satellites in orbit. Structures on the surface that, oh stars. What is it? Captain, there are billions of them. Billions of life forms. Cities covering entire continents. And sir," the officer's voice cracked with disbelief, "they have a fleet. Not just one ship. I'm counting 15 vessels capable of faster-than-light travel, with more under construction." Threxus felt his two hearts skip and sink. "How is this possible?" "They're not primitive, sir. They're advanced. They should have been in the census." The captain thought quickly. This was beyond his authority. This was a crisis that reached the highest levels of the Dominion. "Send a priority alert to Vexerin Prime. Code Omega. We have an uncatalogued civilization with FTL capability. Request immediate instructions." As the message raced across the galaxy, Threxus stared at the blue planet on his screen. Whoever these beings were, they had done something unprecedented. They had built an interstellar civilization right under the Dominion's nose. The question was, what would happen when two civilizations, one ancient and vast, the other young and hungry, finally met? First contact protocol. The emergency council chamber on Vexerin Prime filled within minutes of the Code Omega alert. High Arbiter Theshan materialized at the head of the table, her usually calm demeanor replaced with visible agitation. "Explain this impossibility," she demanded. Kelroth projected the data from Surveyor's Pride. The hologram showed Earth in stunning detail, glittering cities, sprawling infrastructure, ships moving between the planet and its moon. "They call themselves humans," Kelroth reported, his voice unsteady. "Carbon-based bipeds. Single homeworld. Population, 8 billion. They achieved faster-than-light capability approximately 3 standard months ago." 3 months. Counselor Vren, a massive insectoid from the warrior Kresh species, clicked his mandibles in disbelief. How did 300 years of monitoring miss this? "The last survey was automated," Kelroth admitted, shame coloring his voice. "The probe detected primitive radio signals and classified the system as presentient. No follow-up was scheduled." Silence fell across the chamber. The Dominion's greatest pride was its thoroughness. They had mapped every star, catalogued every species, brought order to chaos. This was more than a mistake. It was a fundamental failure. "What do we know of their capabilities?" Theshan asked, forcing calm into her voice. "Limited data, High Arbiter. Captain Threxus reports their FTL technology is crude but functional. Their ships are heavily armed, missiles, kinetic weapons, directed energy systems. Military focus suggests a combative history. Are they a threat?" Kelroth hesitated. "Unknown. But High Arbiter, they're expanding rapidly. 3 months ago they had no FTL. Now they have 15 ships. By our projections they could have hundreds within a standard year." Vren leaned forward, his armored plates scraping against his seat. "Then we must make contact. Establish dominance before they become a problem. Or," Counselor Yima, an ethereal being whose wisdom spanned centuries, spoke softly, "we could acknowledge our error and approach them as equals." "Equals?" Vren's voice rose. "They're newcomers. Children playing with fire. The Dominion has maintained peace for 10 millennia because we establish order. If we show weakness now—" "Knowledge is not weakness," Yima interrupted. "We fail to count them. That is our shame, not theirs. How we proceed will define us." Theshan raised a hand, silencing the debate. "Send the first contact fleet. Standard diplomatic protocols, but be prepared for any outcome. Kelroth, you will lead the delegation. This is your responsibility to correct." Kelroth bowed, accepting the burden. "Yes, High Arbiter." "And Kelroth?" Theshan's eyes fixed on him. "Do not underestimate them. Any species that rose to the stars unnoticed has already proven themselves exceptional." Aboard the Endeavour, Maeve Chen was dealing with her own crisis. Her communications team had spent 3 days decoding the Galactic Network's protocols. What they found shook humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. "Captain, you need to see this," Commander Vance called her to the briefing room. The walls lit up with data. Star charts showing the Dominion's territory, vast beyond comprehension. Species files on thousands of civilizations. Trade routes, military installations, diplomatic treaties spanning millennia. How many? Maeve asked quietly. 7,463 recorded species, Vance replied. And Captain, were not on the list. Not even a footnote. Maeve processed this. Humanity had been so proud of reaching the stars. They'd thought themselves pioneers. Instead, they were latecomers to a party that had been running for 10,000 years. What else? They have rules. The Dominion census determines citizenship. Species that achieve FTL and meet certain criteria get invited to join. Those that don't, well, they get left alone or absorbed depending on circumstances. And since they never counted us, we have no legal status in their system, Vance finished. As far as the Dominion is concerned, we don't exist. Our ships, our colonies, our expansion, it's all happening in territory they might claim as uninhabited. May felt a chill. What happens when they realize we're here? As if in answer, the tactical officer's console lit up. Captain, we have multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. 20 vessels, unknown configuration. They're forming a perimeter around us. Battle stations, Maeve ordered, her training overriding her fear. Shields up. Weapons hot but do not fire unless fired upon. The view screen flickered and a face appeared. 4 eyes, blue-scaled skin, and an expression that might have been nervousness on a human face. Unknown vessel, this is Administrator Calroth of the Galactic Dominion. Please stand down your weapons. We come in peace. Maeve took a breath. This was it. First contact. Administrator Calroth, this is Captain Maeve Chin of the United Nations Space Command. We're a bit confused. Your people seem surprised we're here. Calroth's translation implant converted her words, and she saw something like embarrassment flicker across his alien features. Captain Chin, there has been a bureaucratic error. We were unaware of your species' existence. This is highly irregular, and I apologize on behalf of the Dominion. You've mapped the galaxy for 10,000 years, Maeve said carefully, and you missed an entire planet? The circumstances are complicated. May we discuss this in person? I assure you the Dominion means your people no harm. We simply wish to correct the oversight. Maeve glanced at Vance, who shrugged. They were outnumbered and outgunned. But the alien seemed genuinely apologetic. Very well. You may dock with our ship. Small delegation only. An administrator? We'll be keeping our weapons active just in case. Understood, Captain. That is prudent. An hour later, Calroth stood in the Endeavor's conference room, flanked by 2 guards. Across from him sat Maeve, Vance, and 3 other human officers. The cultural divide was immediately apparent. The human's body language was closed, defensive. They didn't trust him. Smart, Calroth thought. Let me begin with a formal apology, he said. 300 of your years ago, an automated probe surveyed your system. It detected radio signals but classified your species as presentient. No follow-up survey was conducted. This was a catastrophic failure of protocol. So for 3 centuries, Maeve said slowly, you've thought of us as primitives? We thought of you not at all, Calroth admitted. And that, I realize now, is worse. You developed FTL capability, built a fleet, and began exploring, all while we believed your system empty. The error is inexcusable. What happens now? Vance asked. Do you force us to join your empire? Quarantine us? What are our options? Calroth spread his hands. That is what I came to discuss. By standard protocol, you would be offered Dominion citizenship. You meet all the criteria: FTL capability, complex social structure, technological sophistication. However, we were never counted, Maeve finished. So technically, we don't exist in your legal framework. Precisely. This creates a unique situation. You are, effectively, invisible to Dominion law. You could continue expanding, establishing colonies, and we would have no legal grounds to stop you. But you would also have no protections, no trade agreements, no diplomatic standing. Or, Maeve sensed there was more. Or we conduct an emergency census. We officially recognize humanity. You join the Dominion with full rights and responsibilities. The room fell silent. Maeve looked at her officers, seeing the same conflict in their eyes. Independence versus security. Freedom versus belonging. We need to discuss this with our government, Maeve said finally. This decision affects our entire species. Of course. I will wait. No, Maeve interrupted. You'll return to your ship. We'll contact you when we have an answer. An administrator? Your ships will maintain their current distance. Any closer and we'll consider it an act of aggression. Kelroth nodded slowly. These humans were cautious, proud, and clearly accustomed to conflict. The Dominion had met warrior species before, but something about the humans unsettled him. They had survived and thrived while being completely ignored by the greatest civilization in the galaxy. They had done it alone. What else were they capable of? As Kelroth returned to his ship, he sent a message to Vexerin Prime. First contact established. No hostilities. However, High Arbiter, these humans are not what we expected. They are not grateful for our attention. They are wary. Proceeding with caution. Theshin read the message and felt a stirring of something she hadn't experienced in centuries. Uncertainty. The humans had a choice to make. But so did the Dominion. How do you integrate a species you forgot to count? The hidden advantage. The emergency session of the United Nations Security Council took place via quantum-encrypted link, connecting leaders from Earth, Luna Colony, and Mars Station. Secretary-General Amara Okonkwo presided over the most important meeting in human history. Let me understand this correctly, she said, looking at the report Captain Chin had transmitted. We've been living next door to an empire of 7,000 alien species, and they simply forgot about us? Not forgot, Madam Secretary, Maeve corrected via holocall. They never properly looked. Their probe came during the 1700s, saw smoke from our factories and marked us as non-sentient. And now they want us to join their club, President Maria Santos of the Americas added, skepticism dripping from her voice. Out of the goodness of their hearts? They're embarrassed, Maeve said. We're a bureaucratic nightmare for them. An FTL species that exists outside their legal framework. They don't know what to do with us. Defense Minister Akio Tanaka leaned forward, his expression grave. Captain Chin, military assessment. If they wanted to force the issue, could we resist? Maeve hesitated. Short answer? No. They have thousands of worlds, millions of ships, and weapons technology centuries beyond ours. In a straight fight, we'd lose. But Amara sensed there was more. But they don't want to fight. The Dominion has maintained peace for 10,000 years through order and bureaucracy. War would be chaos. It would mean admitting their system failed so badly that violence became necessary. So we have leverage, Prime Minister Chin Wei of the East Asian Coalition mused. They need us to cooperate. Exactly. We're an anomaly. If they can integrate us peacefully, it proves their system still works. If they have to conquer us, it exposes how fragile that system really is. Amara looked around the virtual table at the faces of humanity's leaders. Options. We could refuse, Santos suggested. Maintain independence. We've survived this long without them. And risk conflict, Tanaka countered. Or worse, being frozen out of galactic trade and diplomacy. We'd be isolated. Or, Amara said slowly, an idea forming, we negotiate. We join but on our terms. Use our unique position to secure advantages other species didn't have. The room fell silent as they considered this. What kind of advantages? Chinwei asked. That's what we need to figure out. Captain Chin, tell Administrator Kelroth we're willing to talk. But these negotiations will happen on Earth. Make them come to us. Back aboard his flagship, Kelroth received the message with mixed feelings. The humans wanted to negotiate on their homeworld. It was a power play, forcing the Dominion to come to them rather than summoning them to Vexerin Prime. Bold. Perhaps too bold. Sir, should I inform them that standard protocol requires new species to present themselves at the capital? His aide Milvex asked. No, Kelroth decided. We broke protocol by missing them entirely. Let them have this small victory. Besides, he looked at the blue planet on his screen, I'm curious to see their world. 2 days later, Kelroth's shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere. He had visited hundreds of worlds, but something about this one struck him immediately. The diversity. Where most species' homeworlds showed uniformity, one dominant climate, one primary culture, Earth was chaos. Deserts beside oceans. Ice caps and tropics. And the cities, each one different, reflecting distinct architectural styles, cultural aesthetics, and historical development. They're not unified, Milvex observed as they flew over New York toward the UN complex. Look at the borders. Different governments, different systems. Most species unify before reaching the stars, Kelroth murmured. The humans achieved FTL while still divided. Fascinating. And concerning. The shuttle landed on the UN plaza. Kelroth emerged to find himself surrounded by security forces bearing weapons he couldn't immediately classify. Effective intimidation. Secretary General Okonkwo waited at the building's entrance, flanked by an honor guard. She was tall, dark-skinned, and her eyes held the weight of representing 8 billion souls. Administrator Kelroth, welcome to Earth, she said, extending her hand. Kelroth had been briefed on the gesture. He took her hand, noting the firmness of her grip. A dominance display, subtle but clear. Secretary General Okonkwo, thank you for receiving us. Your world is remarkable. It's home, she said simply. Please come inside. We have much to discuss. The negotiation room was deliberately designed to put the Dominion delegation off balance. Instead of the sterile meeting chambers Kelroth was used to, this one had windows overlooking Central Park. Trees, grass, children playing. A reminder that this was a living world, not a diplomatic abstraction. Let's be direct, Amara began once they were seated. You want us to join the Dominion? We're willing to consider it. But we have conditions. The Dominion has standard integration protocols, Kelroth started. Which don't apply to us, Amara interrupted smoothly. We were never counted. We exist outside your legal framework. By your own rules, we're not bound by standard protocols. Kelroth felt a spike of respect. She had found the loophole immediately. What are your terms? First, we maintain our military. Full independence in matters of self-defense. Unacceptable. All Dominion species contribute to collective security. We'll contribute, but our ships remain under human command. We won't subordinate our military to foreign control. Kelroth made a note. Stubborn but not unreasonable. Continue. Second, we want unrestricted access to the galactic market and technology exchanges. No embargoes, no restrictions based on our newness. That could be dangerous. Some technologies require maturity. We built FTL from scratch while you thought we were banging rocks together, Amara said coolly. We'll decide what we're ready for. Third demand followed the second, then the fourth and fifth. With each one, Kelroth realized he was not negotiating with a naive newcomer species. The humans had spent days analyzing the Dominion's legal structure, finding every gap, every advantage. They were leveraging their invisibility masterfully. You realize, Kelroth said finally, that other species will resent these privileges. They'll see you as receiving special treatment. Then perhaps, Amara replied, you should have counted us properly the first time. The negotiations continued for 3 days. Kelroth found himself actually enjoying the process. Most species were so grateful for Dominion membership that they accepted whatever terms were offered. The humans fought for every clause, every exception. On the third evening, Kelroth requested a private meeting with Amara. They walked through Central Park as the sun set, two leaders trying to understand each other. Why do you push so hard? Kelroth asked. The Dominion offers protection, prosperity, peace. Yet you demand concessions as if we're enemies. Amara was quiet for a moment. Administrator, do you know Earth's history? Some. Your files have been educational. We've been counting ourselves for a long time. Not censuses of species but of peoples, nations, tribes. And every time someone with power decided they didn't need to count a group, that they were too primitive, too different, too other, terrible things followed. She stopped, looking at the park around them. We were invisible to you. Not through malice but through neglect. And that neglect meant we developed alone, without guidance, without protection, without even the knowledge that we were being watched. We survived anyway. You think we would have interfered with your development? Kelroth asked. I think you would have made decisions about our future without us. And that, Administrator, is why we fight for every concession. Because we learned long ago that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Kelroth understood then. The humans weren't being difficult. They were being cautious. Their entire history had taught them that power, once given away, was rarely returned. What if, he said slowly, we offered you something unprecedented? A seat on the Dominion Council itself. A voice in galactic governance from day one. Amara's eyes widened. That would violate your protocols. New species serve probationary periods. You were never new, Kelroth interrupted. You've been here all along. We just failed to see you. Perhaps it's time the Dominion learned to see differently. The offer was transmitted to Vexerin Prime. High Arbiter Theshan read it with growing alarm. A council seat? For an uncounted species? Kelroth has lost his mind. Or, Counselor Yima suggested gently, he's found his wisdom. The humans are different, High Arbiter. They had no one to guide them, no templates to follow. Yet they reached the stars. Perhaps we should ask ourselves what they learned that we forgot. They learned to be paranoid and territorial, Vren growled. This is a mistake. Is it? Yima countered. Or is it the correction of an older mistake? We pride ourselves on counting every species. But we never asked, what did we miss while we were busy counting? Theshan was silent. The Dominion had run smoothly for millennia precisely because of its order, its protocols, its careful management. The humans threatened that order simply by existing. But perhaps that was exactly what the Dominion needed. A reminder that the galaxy was larger than any census could capture. Approve Kelrotha's offer, she decided. Let's see what happens when we stop trying to fit humanity into our framework, and instead make room for theirs. When Kelroth delivered the news, Amara's response was characteristic. We'll need to see the Council Charter first. And we want veto rights on any decisions affecting Earth or human colonies. Kelroth laughed, the sound startling his aides. Of course you do. Very well. Draft your amendments. It seems humanity is about to reshape the Dominion whether we're ready or not. As the delegation prepared to leave Earth, Milvex approached his superior privately. Sir, aren't we giving them too much? They're one species among thousands. Kelroth looked up at the stars, visible now as night fell. We gave them nothing, Milvex. We ignored them. They built everything themselves. All we're doing now is acknowledging what they've already proven. Which is that being uncounted doesn't mean being uncountable. The humans survived without us. Now we get to discover if the Dominion can adapt with them. It was, Kelroth realized, going to be an interesting few centuries. The Whisper Network. 3 months after humanity's formal integration into the Dominion, Ambassador Daniela Reeves arrived at Vexarin Prime. She was Earth's first representative to the Galactic Council, and she came prepared. Impressive, her aide, Marcus Webb, muttered as their ship docked at the massive station. Makes the UN building look like a garden shed. Daniela smiled thinly. That's the point. Intimidate the newcomers. Show them how small they are. But Daniela wasn't easily intimidated. She'd been a hostage negotiator in Rio, a diplomat during the water wars, and the architect of the Luna Accords. She had dealt with people who thought they were untouchable before. The Dominion was just bigger. Her first council session was scheduled for the next day. Daniela spent the evening studying the files Earth's intelligence services had compiled, everything they'd pulled from the Galactic Network in the past months. What she found disturbed her. Marcus, look at this, she called to her aide. The Dominion has 7,000 member species, right? Give or take. But only about 200 have any real power. The rest are just there. They follow the rules, pay their dues, and get basically nothing in return. Marcus frowned. So it's not really a democracy? It's a bureaucracy masquerading as one. The Council makes the real decisions, and the Council is dominated by the same dozen species who founded the Dominion. Everyone else is window dressing. And we just joined this? We joined with a council seat, Daniela corrected. We skipped the line. Some species have waited thousands of years for that privilege. We got it in months. That's going to make us popular, Marcus said dryly. Daniela didn't sleep that night. She was too busy thinking about what it meant to represent humanity in a government that was 10,000 years old. They were newcomers. Outsiders. The species that shouldn't exist. She could use that. The council chamber was even more impressive than the docking bay. Representatives from 200 species sat in a massive amphitheater, arranged by seniority. Daniela's assigned seat was in the back, in the section reserved for new members. She didn't sit there. Instead, she walked down to the floor and took a seat in the empty chair marked Terra. It was in the prime section, 5th row, usually reserved for species with at least a millennium of membership. The chamber fell silent. Excuse me, a beetle-like alien scuttled over, its translator chirping. That seat is designated for Terra, Daniela interrupted. Earth. That's us. According to the amended charter we signed, humanity gets immediate council privileges. Unless there's been a mistake. The administrator checked his tablet, mandibles clicking nervously. This is highly irregular. So was forgetting to count us, Daniela said pleasantly. Shall we call this even? She sat down. Behind her, she could feel hundreds of alien eyes staring. Let them stare. Humanity had fought too hard for this seat to accept being shoved in the back. High Arbiter Theshan called the session to order. We have several matters to address. First, the petition from the Zeltrax Confederation regarding mining rights in Sector 19. Point of order, Daniela stood. Theshan's translucent form flickered with what might have been annoyance. The chair recognizes Ambassador Reeves of Terra. Thank you, High Arbiter. Before we discuss mining rights, I'd like to raise a procedural concern. I've reviewed the council records for the past century, and I've noticed that certain species consistently have their petitions heard first, while others wait years for a hearing. What's the criteria for priority? Dead silence. It was the kind of question newcomers weren't supposed to ask. It exposed the power structure everyone pretended didn't exist. Council business is prioritized by various factors, Theshan said carefully, such as urgency, strategic importance, historical precedent. I see. And who determines these factors? The council's administrative board. Which consists of? Theshan's patience was clearly wearing thin. The founding species and select senior members. So a small group decides what's important for everyone else. Interesting. I'd like to propose an amendment to allow all council members to vote on agenda priorities. Seems more democratic. The chamber erupted. Species that had been silent for decades suddenly found their voices. Some supported the idea. Others vehemently opposed it. The neat, orderly council session devolved into chaos. Theshan finally restored order by threatening to adjourn. Ambassador Reeves, your proposal will be noted and discussed at the appropriate time. For now, we will proceed with scheduled business. Daniela sat down satisfied. She hadn't expected the amendment to pass. She just wanted to send a message. Humanity wasn't going to play by the old rules. After the session, Daniela returned to the human embassy to find 23 requests for private meetings waiting. Species she'd never heard of, all wanting to talk to the ambassador who had dared to question the council's structure. Should I start scheduling? Marcus asked. All of them. As soon as possible. Over the next weeks, Daniela met with representatives from dozens of smaller species. The pattern was always the same. They'd been in the Dominion for centuries or millennia. They paid their contributions, followed the rules, and received almost nothing in return. No trade advantages. No technology sharing. No real voice in decisions. They were members in name only. Why don't you speak up? Daniela asked a Thurian representative, a six-limbed being whose species had joined the Dominion over 1,000 years ago. We did. What? The council said our concerns would be addressed. That was 300 years ago. We're still waiting. So you gave up? The Thurian made a gesture Daniela's translator interpreted as resignation. What else could we do? We're small. Insignificant. The Dominion tolerates us, but we're not important enough to matter. Daniela leaned forward. What if I told you that could change? How? You're new. Younger than any species here. Why would the council listen to you? Because we're the species they forgot. We're proof their system isn't perfect. And because unlike you, we didn't ask permission to be heard. We demanded it. Word of these meetings spread. Soon, Daniela was hosting regular gatherings at the human embassy. She called them discussion groups. Others called them something else. The Whisper Network. It started small. 20 species, then 50, then 100. All of them smaller members tired of being ignored. They shared information, coordinated proposals, and backed each other's petitions. Individually they were weak. Together they became harder to dismiss. Councillor Vren noticed first. The humans are building a coalition. They're organizing the minor species against us. Against us? Yima asked mildly. Or for themselves? It's the same thing. For 10,000 years, the Dominion has maintained order through clear hierarchy. These humans are disrupting that. Perhaps that hierarchy needed disrupting, Yima suggested. Vren's mandibles clacked with frustration. You defend them? They've been here mere months and they're already causing chaos. They're causing questions, Yima corrected. There's a difference. Theshan called Daniela to a private meeting. The High Arbiter's office overlooked the capital city, a vista of gleaming towers and flowing energy streams. You're making waves, Ambassador Reeves? That's what happens when you drop rocks in still water, Daniela replied. The council is not still water. It's a carefully balanced system. What you're doing could destabilize that balance. With respect, High Arbiter, I think your system has been unstable for a long time. You just didn't notice because the imbalance favored certain species. Theshan was quiet for a long moment. What do you want? The same thing you claim the Dominion wants. Real representation. Actual democracy, not theatrical democracy. A system where being small doesn't mean being voiceless. And you think you can achieve this? In a government that has existed for 10 millennia? I think, Daniela said carefully, that you forgot to count us. Which means you've probably forgotten other things too. Like why the Dominion was founded in the first place. Enlighten me. According to your own records, it was created to prevent the strong from dominating the weak. To give all species a voice. Somewhere along the way you traded that ideal for efficiency. You created a system that works but only for those at the top. And you propose to fix this? I propose to remind you what you're supposed to be. Theshan studied the human. She was small by galactic standards, her lifespan a fraction of most council members. Yet she had done in months what others hadn't managed in millennia. She'd created an opposition. You realize this could fail, Theshan said. The established powers won't give up their privileges easily. Then we'll take them, Daniela said simply. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise. Humanity didn't survive being forgotten by being polite. We learned to fight for what we need. And right now hundreds of species need the Dominion to remember its purpose. After Daniela left, Theshan stood alone in her office watching the city below. Yima materialized beside her. She's dangerous, Theshan said softly. She's necessary, Yima replied. How so? Because we've become what we once opposed. A system that serves the powerful and ignores the weak. The humans see this because they're new. They haven't learned to accept it as normal yet. So what do? We choose, Yima said. We can fight to maintain the status quo and prove the humans right about us. Or we can remember why the Dominion was created and become what we claim to be. Theshan looked at her old friend. You think they can actually reform the council? I think, Yima said with a smile, that they already have. The question is whether we'll help them or hinder them. Back at the human embassy, Daniela's network had grown to over 200 species. They had drafted a reform proposal. Nothing revolutionary, just changes that would give smaller species more actual power. It'll never pass, Marcus warned. The senior council members will block it. Probably, Daniela agreed. But we'll make them do it publicly. Make them vote against democracy and representation. And then everyone will see the Dominion for what it really is. And then we keep pushing. Keep organizing. Keep asking uncomfortable questions. We might not win this vote, but we'll win eventually. Because we have time and momentum and something the old guard has forgotten. What's that? Daniela smiled. We remember what it's like to be uncounted. And we'll never let ourselves, or anyone else, be invisible again. The vote was scheduled for the following month. The Dominion was about to learn that forgetting humanity wasn't their biggest mistake. Underestimating them was. The vote that changed everything. The day of the vote arrived with unusual tension hanging over Vexerin Prime. The council chamber filled early, species who normally sent proxies arriving in person. Everyone knew this was more than a vote on procedural reforms. This was a vote on the future of the Dominion itself. Daniela arrived to find the human embassy surrounded by news drones from a dozen species. The galactic media had caught on to the story, the new species that was challenging 10,000 years of tradition. Ambassador Reeves, do you really believe you can change the council? Are the reforms a threat to Dominion stability? Is Earth planning to leave the Dominion if the vote fails? Daniela stopped and addressed them all. The Dominion was built on principles of representation and justice. Our reforms simply ask the Council to honor those principles. That's not a threat. That's a reminder. Inside, Marcus waited with the latest count. We're close. 273 confirmed votes for the reforms. We need 300 for a majority. And opposition? 248 confirmed against. The rest are undecided or silent. The senior members? All against. Vren is actively campaigning against us. Calls the reforms chaos in disguise. Daniela wasn't surprised. The Kresh counselor had been her most vocal opponent from the start. He saw the reforms as a direct attack on the natural order of things. And Theshan? The High Arbiter hasn't declared her position. That's actually good news. If she opposed us, she'd say so. The session began at noon. Theshan called the council to order, and the chamber fell into attentive silence. Before us today is Proposal 7734H, submitted by the Terran delegation and co-sponsored by 187 member species. The proposal contains 17 amendments to council procedures, primarily focused on agenda setting, speaking rights, and vote weighting. The floor is now open for discussion. Vren stood immediately. High Arbiter, I speak against this proposal. The Dominion has maintained peace and prosperity for 10 millennia through established procedures. These reforms would introduce chaos, allowing any species to hijack our agenda with trivial concerns. With respect, Councillor Vren, a small reptilian ambassador rose. Trivial to whom? My people have waited 400 years for our petition regarding environmental protections to be heard. How is that trivial? If it was truly urgent, it would have been prioritized, Vren countered. By the same board that represents less than 3% of member species? Another voice called out. How is that fair? The debate escalated quickly. For hours, ambassadors who had been silent for years suddenly found their voices. They spoke of petitions ignored, of being told to wait while more important matters were addressed, of feeling like decorations rather than true members. Daniela let them speak. This was what the Whisper Network had prepared for, a moment when the forgotten could no longer be ignored. Finally she stood. High Arbiter, may I address the council? The floor recognizes Ambassador Reeves. Daniela walked to the central podium, feeling hundreds of eyes upon her. 3 months ago, I arrived at this chamber and was directed to sit in the back. Today, I stand before you representing not just humanity, but a question the Dominion must answer. What question? Theshan asked. Whether you meant it. When the Dominion was founded, its charter spoke of giving voice to all species, of preventing the strong from silencing the weak, of building a civilization based on cooperation rather than domination. Were those just words? Or did you mean them? Of course we meant them, Vren snapped. The Dominion has given membership to thousands. Membership is not voice, Daniela interrupted. Being in the room is not the same as being heard. You counted species but you didn't count their concerns. You offered seats but not influence. And when species like mine developed outside your notice, you proved something important. What? A counselor from the Polynesian Union asked. That your system isn't as comprehensive as you believed. You missed us. An entire species with 8 billion souls, building starships, establishing colonies. If you could miss us, what else have you missed? What other voices have you stopped hearing? The chamber was silent now. These reforms don't weaken the Dominion, Daniela continued. They strengthen it by ensuring that what happened to humanity never happens again. By making sure that every species, no matter how small or new, has the same chance to be heard. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many ambassadors as she could. You can vote against this. You can maintain your system exactly as it is. But if you do, you're admitting that the Dominion's principles were never real. That they were just pretty words meant to make conquest look like cooperation. Daniela returned to her seat. The silence stretched for a long moment before Theshan spoke. The High Arbiter will now state her position. The entire chamber held its breath. Theshan had never done this before. High Arbiters traditionally remained neutral on votes, only breaking ties. I have served the Dominion for 800 years, Theshan began, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. I have witnessed its growth, celebrated its achievements, and defended its principles. Today I must ask myself, what are those principles worth if we do not honor them? Vren's mandibles clacked in alarm. High Arbiter, surely you're not. I am not finished, Counselor, Theshan said, and her voice carried the weight of centuries. Ambassador Reeves is correct. We forgot to count humanity. Not through malice but through complacency. We became so confident in our systems that we stopped questioning them. We stopped looking beyond what we expected to see. She paused, her translucent form seeming to shimmer with emotion. The humans are not wrong to challenge us. They are not being disruptive for the sake of chaos. They are asking us to be what we claim to be. And that, my fellow counselors, is something we should welcome, not fear. So you support the reforms? Someone asked. I support the principle behind them. The specific amendments can be debated and refined. But the core idea, that all voices deserve equal access to being heard, that is not negotiable. It is what the Dominion was built upon. If we lose that, we lose everything. The debate continued for another hour, but the tide had turned. Theshan's statement had given cover to those who wanted to support the reforms but feared going against the establishment. One by one, previously undecided counselors declared their positions. When the vote was finally called, the results appeared on the central display. For 312 against, 201 abstain, 47. The chamber erupted in noise, cheers from some species, angry protests from others. Daniela sat quietly, letting the moment wash over her. They had done it. A coalition of the forgotten had just changed the course of galactic history. After the session, Kelroth found Daniela in a side corridor. Ambassador, that was remarkable. It was necessary, she replied. I want you to know I supported the reforms. Not just because of what happened with your species, but because you were right. We stopped listening. We stopped seeing. Thank you, Administrator. But Ambassador, you must understand, this victory will make you enemies. Powerful enemies. Vren is already calling for an investigation into human influence operations. Daniela smiled. Let him investigate. He'll find exactly what we've been doing, talking to people, listening to them, organizing around shared interests. If that's illegal, then the Dominion has bigger problems than us. It's not illegal, but it's threatening. The humans have rewritten the rules of power here in mere months. That scares people. Good, Daniela said. Comfortable power is dangerous power. It needs to be scared occasionally. That night, the Whisper Network held a celebration at the human embassy. Representatives from hundreds of species crowded into the building, sharing drinks and stories. These were the species who had been waiting centuries for someone to hear them. What happens now? Marcus asked Daniela as they watched the celebration. Now we make sure the reforms actually work. Having the rules is one thing. Enforcing them is another. And if the senior counselors try to undermine them, then we remind them why we won today. Not because we're stronger or older or more advanced, but because we were right. Across the city in a private meeting room, Vren was holding a very different gathering. A dozen senior counselors sat around a table, their expressions ranging from angry to concerned. This cannot stand, Vren declared. The humans have been here mere months and they've already destabilized our government. They want a vote, Counselor Thren, a gas being from the Nebulos Collective, pointed out. Fair and square. Fair? Vren's voice rose. They manipulated hundreds of minor species. They organized them, Yima interrupted, appearing in an empty chair. There's a difference. Counselor Yima, I didn't invite you to this meeting. I know. But I thought someone should represent the perspective you're all ignoring. Which is? That we lost today because we deserved to lose. Because we built a system that served us and forgot about everyone else. The humans didn't create that problem. They just exposed it. So you support them? Another counselor demanded. I support the Dominion, Yima said firmly. Which means I support anything that makes us better, stronger, and more true to our founding principles. If you want to fight the humans, you're welcome to try. But you won't be fighting them. You'll be fighting every species that voted for change today. Good luck with that. Yima vanished, leaving the room in uncomfortable silence. Finally, Thren spoke. Yima is right. We can either adapt or become irrelevant. I vote we adapt. Traitor, Vren hissed. Realist, Thren corrected. The humans won today. They'll keep winning unless we change. So I suggest we stop treating them as enemies and start treating them as what they are. What's that? The future. Like it or not. Back on Earth, the news of the Dominion vote spread rapidly. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for only months, and they'd already reshaped its government. Secretary-General Okonkwo addressed the UN General Assembly via holofeed. Today, humanity proved something important. That being forgotten doesn't mean being powerless. That starting late doesn't mean finishing last. We entered a galaxy that had been ordered without us, and we reminded them that true order comes from listening to all voices, not just the loudest. In homes and gathering places across Earth and its colonies, humans watched the footage of the Council vote. They saw their ambassadors stand before thousands of alien species and speak truth to power. They saw democracy work even on a galactic scale. And they realized something profound. Being uncounted had been humanity's greatest disadvantage. But it had also been their greatest teacher. It had shown them the cost of being ignored, the pain of being invisible. Now they would make sure no one else had to learn that lesson. The vote had passed. The reforms would take effect. But this was just the beginning. The Dominion was changing and humanity was the catalyst. The question was no longer whether they could survive in the galaxy. It was whether the galaxy could survive them. The uncounted rebellion. 6 months after the reforms passed, the Dominion faced a crisis no one had predicted. The Zerithian system, a moderately powerful member species with 12 colony worlds, announced they were seceding from the Dominion. This is unprecedented, Kelroth told the Emergency Council session. In 10,000 years, no species has voluntarily left the Dominion. Why now? Theshan asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. They cite the reforms. They claim that giving equal voice to minor species diminishes the value of their membership. If they have no more influence than a species with a single world, why remain? Vren stood, his voice triumphant. This is what the humans have wrought. Chaos. Division. The end of the Dominion's stability. One species threatening to leave is not the end of stability, Daniela countered from her seat. One today. How many tomorrow? The humans opened the door to questioning the Dominion's authority. Now others walk through it. The accusation hung in the air. Was humanity responsible? Had their push for democracy fractured the very system they tried to improve? Daniela called an emergency meeting of the Whisper Network that evening. The embassy was packed with representatives, all asking the same question. Are we to blame? A Thurian diplomat asked. The Zerithians cite our reforms as their reason for leaving. The reforms gave everyone equal voice, Daniela said firmly. If the Zerithians can't handle that, it says more about them than us. But Councillor Vren is right about one thing, Marcus added quietly. Other species might follow. If the Dominion fragments, all our work means nothing. The room fell silent. They had fought for democracy, but what if democracy destroyed the system it was meant to improve? Then we don't let it fragment, Daniela decided. We go to Zerith. We talk to them. Find out what they really want. The Zerithians won't receive you, a Pelesian ambassador warned. You're the symbol of everything they're rejecting. Then they'll reject me to my face. Marcus, prep a ship. We leave tomorrow. The journey to Zerith took 3 days. During that time, Daniela studied everything she could about their species. The Zerithians were an old member of the Dominion, over 3,000 years. They'd held significant influence in council affairs, commanded respect, and enjoyed trade privileges. The reforms had changed that. Now their 12 worlds counted the same as species with only one. Their centuries of contribution gave them no more voting weight than newcomers. In their eyes, they'd been demoted. The Zerithian homeworld was beautiful, floating cities suspended in a thick, breathable atmosphere. Daniela's shuttle was met by military escort, a not-so-subtle intimidation tactic. Premier Zolak, the Zerithian leader, received her in a grand hall. He was tall, crystalline, and his voice resonated with harmonic overtones. Ambassador Reeves. I admit I'm surprised you came. I wanted to understand your position, Daniela said simply. My position is simple. The Dominion no longer serves our interests. We contributed resources, technology, and military support for 3,000 years. Our reward? To be told we're no more important than species who joined yesterday. The reforms didn't diminish your importance. They elevated everyone else to equal footing. Which is the same thing, Zolak said coldly. Tell me, Ambassador, why should we remain in a system where our contributions are taken for granted? It was a fair question. Daniela had expected anger or ideology. Instead, she found pragmatism. The Zerithians weren't leaving out of spite. They were leaving because they calculated they'd be better off alone. What would make you stay? She asked. Nothing. The decision is made. I don't believe that. You agreed to meet with me. If you truly wanted to leave, you'd have refused. Zolak's crystalline surface flickered, surprise perhaps. You're perceptive for such a young species. We're young to the Dominion, not young to politics. So tell me, what do you really want? The Zerithian premier was silent for a long moment. Then, recognition. Not of our power but of our contribution. The reforms treated all species as equal, which is noble. But it ignored history. We built the Dominion's defense grid. We mediated conflicts for millennia. We earned our influence. The humans waltzed in and took it all away. Daniela understood then. This wasn't about power. It was about respect. You're right, she said, and Zolak's surprise was obvious. The reforms didn't account for legacy contributions. That was an oversight. An oversight that cost us our voice. No. An incomplete solution that needs refinement. Daniela leaned forward. Premier, we didn't fight for reforms to erase history. We fought to ensure present voices weren't silenced. But you're showing me we missed something important. Which is that there's a difference between equal access and equal standing. New species need the same opportunity to be heard. But species like yours deserve recognition for what you've built. Maybe we need both. The reforms have already passed. Then we amend them. Add a recognition system. Something that honors contribution without silencing newcomers. Would that satisfy you? Zolak studied her. Why would you do this? It would reduce human influence. Because I didn't come here to build a system that serves only humanity. I came to build one that serves everyone. If that means acknowledging my solution was incomplete, fine. I can live with being wrong if it makes the Dominion better. The Premier's crystalline form seemed to soften slightly. I underestimated you, Ambassador. Most species would defend their victory at all costs. Most species didn't spend 3 centuries being forgotten. It taught us that rigid systems break. Flexible ones adapt. Zolak was quiet for a long time. Finally, if you can get the Council to adopt this recognition framework, we'll reconsider our secession. I'll do better than that. I'll make sure the Zerithians help design it. When Daniela returned to Vexerin Prime, she called another council session. This time she brought Premier Zolak with her. The floor recognizes Ambassador Reeves, Theshan said, curiosity evident in her voice. Thank you, High Arbiter. I come before you with a proposal. 6 months ago we passed reforms to ensure equal access for all voices. Today I'm proposing we add to those reforms a framework recognizing historical contribution. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. The reforms were meant to give smaller species voice, a counselor called out. Now you want to honor the powerful again? No, Daniela said firmly. I want to honor everyone appropriately. The reforms gave us equal access. This framework gives us equal respect. There's a difference. She explained her conversations with Zolak, the Zerithian concerns, and the solution they developed together. A point system recognizing contributions, resources shared, conflicts mediated, technology developed for common use. Points would grant ceremonial recognition and certain advisory privileges, but not voting weight. You'd still have equal voice, Daniela said to the smaller species. But species who've built the Dominion would receive acknowledgement for that work. It's not about power. It's about respect. Vren stood, and for once he didn't sound angry. Ambassador Reeves, this is surprisingly sensible. Even a broken clock is right twice a day, counselor, Daniela said dryly, earning scattered laughter. But why propose this? It benefits the established powers. It weakens your coalition. Because my goal was never to tear down the established powers, Counselor Vren. It was to lift up the forgotten ones. If we can do both, why wouldn't we? The debate was shorter this time. The smaller species recognized that acknowledgement didn't threaten their newfound voice. The established powers saw it as a reasonable compromise. Even Vren, usually Daniela's greatest opponent, spoke in favor. The vote passed with over 90% approval. After the session, Theshan requested a private meeting. You continue to surprise me, Ambassador. How so? You won a major victory with the reforms. You could have declared success and maintained your coalition's advantage. Instead, you compromised with your opponents. Because I realized I'd missed something important. The Dominion is 10,000 years old. It has history, traditions, contributions that matter. I was so focused on fixing the present that I ignored the past. Most revolutionaries would call that weakness. Most revolutionaries fail, Daniela said. I don't want to tear down the Dominion. I want to make it better. And you can't do that by declaring war on everyone who came before you. Theshan smiled, a rare expression. You know, when humans first arrived, many of us feared you would be disruptive. We are disruptive. Yes. But disruption and destruction are not the same thing. You disrupted our complacency. But you're not destroying our institutions. You're renovating them. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. And a warning. About what? That renovation is harder than destruction. Maintaining your principles while compromising with reality. Pushing for change while respecting tradition. That's the real challenge. Can humanity sustain it? Daniela thought about that. I don't know. We're good at fighting. Less good at governing. But we're trying to learn. Then learn quickly. Because what you've started cannot be stopped now. The Dominion is changing. Whether that change strengthens us or breaks us depends largely on you. The Zerithian crisis ended 2 weeks later. With the recognition framework in place, Premier Zolak announced they would remain in the Dominion. Other species who'd been considering secession also stayed. The coalition Daniela had built, the Whisper Network, became a permanent fixture of Dominion politics. But it evolved. Instead of simply opposing the establishment, it worked with them. Smaller species gained voice. Established powers gained recognition. The system flexed and adapted. It wasn't perfect. Arguments still erupted. Interests still clashed. But for the first time in millennia, the Dominion felt alive. Dynamic. Responsive. Marcus found Daniela on the embassy's observation deck one evening. You did it? Saved the Dominion from fracturing. We delayed it, maybe. These tensions will come back. So what do? We keep adapting. Keep listening. Keep remembering that rigid things break and flexible things survive. Is that a human philosophy? Daniela smiled. It's a universal one. We just had to be forgotten to learn it. Down on Earth, Secretary General Okonkwo read the reports from Vexerin Prime with satisfaction. Humanity had entered the galactic stage and made their mark. Not through conquest or force but through something simpler. They'd reminded an ancient civilization how to change. The Dominion had counted every species but humanity. That oversight had been their shame. But maybe, Amara thought, it had also been their salvation. Because being uncounted had taught humanity lessons the counted had forgotten. And those lessons might be exactly what the galaxy needed. The new census. 5 years had passed since humanity's introduction to the Dominion. In that time, the galaxy had transformed in ways both subtle and profound. Daniela Reeves stood in the Grand Registry Hall where this journey had begun. Administrator Kelroth stood beside her, both of them looking at the holographic display of counted species. The number had changed. 7,481. 18 new species in 5 years, Kelroth said quietly. All of them found in regions we'd previously classified as empty. You started looking harder, Daniela observed. We started questioning our assumptions. After we missed humanity, I ordered a comprehensive review of all uninhabited systems. We found 6 species developing in isolation. 7 more we'd classified as pre-sentient had actually achieved early spaceflight. 5 had been deliberately hiding from us. Hiding? Why? Kelroth's expression was uncomfortable. They detected our probes and decided they wanted nothing to do with us. They went silent, hoping we'd leave them alone. And you would have. Yes. The old protocols assumed silence meant absence or primitiveness. We never considered that some species might choose not to be counted. Daniela nodded slowly. It made sense. Not every civilization would want to join an existing empire, no matter how benevolent. Some would prefer independence. What did you do when you found them? We changed our approach. Instead of sending probes and making assumptions, we sent diplomats. We offered contact, explained the Dominion, and then, this is the important part, we asked what they wanted. Revolutionary, Daniela said with a slight smile. You mock, but it was revolutionary. For 10,000 years, the Dominion decided what species needed. You taught us to ask instead. Not just me. Every species in the Whisper Network. We all taught each other. Kelroth gestured to the display. Of the 18 newly contacted species, 11 chose to join the Dominion. 3 declined but accepted trade relations. 4 wanted to be left completely alone, and we honored that. The old Dominion would have forced them. The old Dominion was arrogant. It believed its way was the only way. Kelroth turned to face her. Ambassador, I never properly thanked you. For what? For breaking our pride. It hurt, but it was necessary. We needed someone from outside to show us what we'd become. The High Arbiter's summons came that afternoon. Daniela made her way to the council chambers, where an unusual gathering waited. Not just the regular council members, but representatives from over 1,000 species. Something big was happening. Theshan called the session to order. 5 years ago, humanity joined the Dominion under unique circumstances. Today we gather to acknowledge what that meant. A hologram appeared, Earth as it had looked when first properly surveyed. A blue jewel spinning in space, teeming with life that the Dominion had missed. We failed to count humanity, Theshan continued. That failure was the beginning of the greatest period of reform in Dominion history. Ambassador Reeves, would you approach? Daniela walked to the central floor, uncertain what was happening. The council has voted unanimously to establish the Reeves Protocol, Theshan announced. Henceforth, every century the Dominion will conduct a comprehensive recount. We will revisit systems we thought empty. Question assumptions we thought certain. And most importantly, we will ask rather than assume. A ceremonial data pad materialized in Theshan's hands. This protocol is named in your honor not because you forced us to change but because you showed us how. With patience, with logic, and with the understanding that being right is less important than doing right. Daniela accepted the data pad, emotion threatening to overwhelm her professional composure. High Arbiter, I'm honored. But this protocol shouldn't be named for me alone. It represents the work of hundreds of species who found their voice. Which is why, Theshan said with a hint of amusement, we're also establishing the Uncounted Initiative, a permanent council body dedicated to finding and supporting species we may have missed or ignored. You'll lead it if you accept. The chamber erupted in approval from the smaller species. Even some of the senior members showed support. Daniela saw Vren in the crowd, the creche counselor who'd been her greatest opponent. He raised a clawed hand in salute. I accept, Daniela said. On one condition. Which is that the initiative includes representatives from both newly discovered species and established powers. We learned that change works best when everyone has a stake in it. Agreed, Theshan said immediately. That evening, Daniela stood on her apartment's balcony overlooking Vexarin Prime. The city's lights stretched to the horizon, representing thousands of species living in cooperation. It wasn't perfect. Arguments still erupted. Interests still clashed. But it worked. Her communicator chimed. Marcus's face appeared. Ambassador, we just got word from Earth. Captain Chen wants to speak with you. Maeve Chen's image replaced Marcus's. The captain looked older, decorated with medals from humanity's expanding fleet. Ambassador Reeves. Or should I say Director Reeves? I'm still getting used to it myself. How are things in human space, Captain? Expanding rapidly. We have 27 colony worlds now. The Beijing just returned from a survey of the Kepler sector. Found something interesting. What? A species we'd classify as early industrial. Definitely intelligent, definitely on the path to spaceflight. They spotted our probe and tried to signal us. And? I remembered what you did. Instead of cataloging them and moving on, I made contact. Landed a shuttle. Talked to their leaders. Daniela, they've been watching the stars for centuries, wondering if anyone else was out there. Daniela felt a chill of recognition. What did you tell them? The truth. That they're not alone. That there's a dominion of thousands of species. And that when they're ready, if they want, they'll be welcomed. How did they react? They cried. Well, their equivalent. From relief, I think. They'd been so afraid they were the only ones. Daniela understood that fear intimately. Humanity had felt it too for most of their history. The loneliness of thinking you were unique in the universe. What happens now? I left them with a communication device. Told them to contact us when they're ready. No pressure. No demands. Just an open door. You're learning, Captain. We all are. Earth sends its congratulations, by the way. The Uncounted initiative is all over the news. Humanity's ambassador reshaping the galaxy again. Not reshaping. Just reminding it what it's supposed to be. After the call ended, Daniela remained on the balcony. 5 years ago, she'd arrived at Vexarin Prime ready to fight for humanity's place in the galaxy. She'd expected resistance, hostility, rejection. Instead, she'd found a system that was tired, bureaucratic, and complacent. But not evil. Not beyond redemption. The Dominion had forgotten to count humanity. That oversight had been their greatest failure. But it had also been their wake-up call. Her communicator chimed again. This time it was Kelroth. Ambassador, sorry Director, I hope I'm not disturbing you. Not at all. What's going on? The first Reeves Protocol survey results are coming in. We're 3 months into the recount, and we've already found 12 species we'd missed. Well, in 3 months. How? By looking with fresh eyes. By questioning our categorizations. By asking what if we're wrong, before we file a report. That's good news. It's terrifying news, Kelroth corrected. It means we've been blind for millennia. How many species did we miss over 10,000 years? How many civilizations rose and fell while we thought their systems empty? You can't change the past, Kelroth. You can only fix the future. I know. But it's humbling. The Dominion thought itself perfect. Turns out we were just perfectly complacent. After he signed off, Daniela thought about that. Complacency. It was the enemy of every civilization, she realized. The moment you believed you'd figured everything out, you stopped looking for what you'd missed. Humanity had been the thing the Dominion missed. But they'd also been the alarm clock that woke the Dominion up. A year later, the first meeting of the Uncounted initiative took place. Representatives from 40 species attended. Some newly discovered, some long established, all committed to ensuring no one else was forgotten. Our mandate is simple, Daniela opened the meeting. We ask the uncomfortable questions. We check the systems marked empty. We talk to species who decline contact and make sure they truly want to be left alone. We are the voice of the uncounted. A young representative from a recently discovered species raised a tentacle nervously. Director Reeves, what if we find species who are hostile? Who don't want peace? Then we note their position and maintain distance. The Dominion doesn't force membership. But we don't ignore existence either. Even hostile species deserve to be counted, if only so we know they're there. The work was harder than Daniela had anticipated. Old assumptions died hard. Species that had been marked primitive for centuries turned out to have complex civilizations. Systems classified as uninhabited harbored life in forms the Dominion had never imagined. But slowly, methodically, the initiative expanded the census. The number of known species climbed. 7,500. 7,600. 8,000. Each new discovery was treated with care. Teams approached with respect, offered information, and most importantly, listened to what the newly discovered species wanted. Some joined the Dominion immediately. Others took time to decide. A few declined entirely and their wishes were honored. The galaxy was larger than anyone had imagined. And now, finally, the Dominion was beginning to see it clearly. 10 years after humanity's discovery, Daniela stood once more in the Grand Registry Hall. The count had reached 8,214. Nearly 1,000 new species in a decade, Kelroth marveled. The Dominion's membership has increased by more than 10%. And how many did we find that chose not to join? 217. We maintain friendly relations with most, trade agreements with some, and respectful distance from others who prefer isolation. Good. Is it? Kelroth asked. The old Dominion would have been unified. This new one is, Messier. Messier, Daniela agreed. But more honest. The old Dominion pretended to count everyone while missing thousands. This one admits it doesn't have all the answers. I'll take honest mess over false perfection any day. Her term as Earth's ambassador was ending. She'd been offered a permanent position as director of the Uncounted Initiative, but she decided to return home. Let someone else carry the torch forward. What will you do? Kelroth asked. Go home. Teach at the academy. Tell new diplomats about what we learned here. Which is? Daniela smiled. That being forgotten taught humanity valuable lessons. That assumptions are dangerous. That the galaxy is always bigger than we think. And that the most important question we can ask is, who have we missed? Will humanity stay engaged with the Dominion? Always. We're part of this now. But we learned something else, Kelroth. We learned that institutions need fresh perspectives. If we become too established, too comfortable, we'll miss what the next newcomers see. So humanity will always be the uncomfortable voice? Someone needs to be. Might as well be the species you forgot. Daniela's final act as ambassador was to address the full council one last time. 5 years ago I stood here and asked if you meant the words in your charter. Today I stand here to say, yes you did. The Dominion has reformed, adapted, and grown. You found nearly 1,000 species you'd missed. You've changed how you approach contact. You've built systems to ensure this never happens again. She paused, looking around the chamber at the thousands of faces, some familiar, many still new. But my final warning is this: don't let this become the new complacency. Don't let the Reeves Protocol become just another bureaucratic process you follow without questioning. Every generation must ask, who are we missing? What are we not seeing? Where are we being blind? Because somewhere out there, right now, there's another species like humanity, developing alone, reaching for the stars, wondering if they're unique in the universe. And when you find them, because you will find them, remember how you felt when you realized you'd missed us. Remember the shame. Remember the need to do better. And remember that being counted is a privilege, not a right. The galaxy doesn't owe us acknowledgement. We have to earn it by seeing each other truly. The chamber rose in standing ovation. Even Vren, her old opponent, stood with the others. Daniela smiled, accepted the honor, and stepped down. Her ship departed Vexerin Prime the next day. As they left orbit, Marcus joined her at the observation window. Any regrets? He asked. Hundreds. Things I should have said differently. Deals I could have made better. Species I could have helped more. But overall? Daniela looked out at the stars, scattered like diamonds across the black. We made them look. That's enough. When they arrived back at Earth, Secretary General Okonkwo met them at the spaceport. Welcome home, Ambassador. The planet is grateful for your service. I didn't do it for gratitude. I know. You did it because we were forgotten and you wanted to make sure no one else would be. Mission accomplished. Daniela looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, the Dominion was conducting its surveys, finding new species, asking uncomfortable questions. The work would continue with or without her. That was good. It meant it had become bigger than any one person. Bigger even than humanity. What now? Amara asked. Now I rest. Then I teach. And maybe, eventually, I go back out there. The galaxy is big and the Dominion is still learning to see all of it. Think they'll find more species we missed? Definitely. The question is whether they'll keep adapting when they do. That night, Daniela stood in her old apartment in New York, looking up at the stars. Somewhere up there, in a system the Dominion had marked as uninhabited, another species might be reaching for space. Wondering if they were alone. Building their first crewed spacecraft. The Dominion would find them eventually. And when they did, they'd approach with humility, with respect, with the understanding that every species deserved to be counted. All because the Dominion had once forgotten to count humanity. It had been their greatest failure. But in the end, it had become their salvation. Because being forgotten had taught humanity to remember. And humanity had taught the Dominion to look. The galaxy was infinite. The Dominion would never count every species, every world, every form of life. But they would keep trying. Keep questioning. Keep searching. And that, Daniela thought as sleep finally claimed her, was enough. The census would continue. The galaxy would grow. And somewhere, the next uncounted species was preparing to remind everyone of what they'd missed. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning.